YouTuber and Republican politician Nick Freitas has written a book called The ManBook. I've just finished listening to it on Audible and I have some thoughts. Okay, now before I get into this, I want to be clear that Nick Freitas and I do not know each other and are not affiliated at all. Nick lives and works in the state of Virginia, USA, and has a large social media presence. I live in South Australia and my audience is about the size of, well, you, the person watching this video. I only know Nick because of his Facebook Reels and YouTube videos that pop up on my feed occasionally. It would be a safe bet that Nick has never seen any of my videos because, let's face it, we don't operate in the same circles. But on the off chance that Nick sees this, g'day Nick from Adelaide, South Australia. So, most of Nick's content that I have seen has been mostly humorous observations from his back porch, with the occasional video from the political side of his life as he makes some points while sitting in a government session of some sort. What I've seen through all of this is that he's an educated, articulate man who is passionate about his beliefs both inside and outside of his religion and his dedication to his family and his country. He conveys this with carefully thought out positions, clearly spoken and without the need for bad language. Now, maybe it's a little different when he's off camera, but even in his book, there is almost no swearing. So when he announced his book, ManBook, was available for pre-ordering, I didn't hesitate to order it on Audible. I don't have time to read, so I listen to books as I drive to work. The first thing I enjoyed about the book was the fact that not only did he write it, but he also reads it. This works particularly well because his humour, phrasing and cadence of his writing is best served by his voice. I've listened to a lot of audiobooks, usually work or personal development related, and I have found that I always prefer listening to them in the author's voice. Now, the ManBook is a fascinating listen. It contains 52 lessons that cover a diverse subject list, like cooking a steak, drinking wine and whiskey, through to picking a weapon for self-defense at home, hot wiring a car, making a speech and flirting with your wife in front of the family. If you want the full list, go buy the book and read it because you won't be disappointed. A lot of the content is pretty good, delivered in an entertaining way and translates well to any country, not just America. I don't agree with all of them, but that is mainly due to the sociological differences between America and Australia. I want to touch on a few of these today. The first one is his position on owning and using firearms. Now, to Nick's credit, he explains the Second Amendment quite carefully and goes into detail about why it was written the way it was. It goes a long way towards explaining the origins of the American gun culture and how difficult it will be to effect any change in that regard. I think anyone who wants to debate the Second Amendment should read his explanation to get a greater understanding of what it says and why. Because of the clarity around his explanations, I can fully understand and respect his position. I just don't align with it because we don't have that same kind of gun culture here in Australia. Now, I'm not anti-guns. Several members of my family and some of my friends own them and do the right thing around safe storage and usage and all that kind of thing. I've shot a number of firearms myself and I have no problem with them. I just don't own one and I don't feel the need to. The second point where we kind of part ways is religion and his unashamed relationship with God. This religion is a core pillar of his worldview and is central to some of the lessons later in the book. Like his positions on guns, Nick's religious views are carefully thought out, articulated very specifically and clearly. As Dr. Jordan Peterson says, words matter, and the way you use them to talk about a topic matters. Now, even though I don't share his need to integrate a relationship with God into my worldview, check out my video on God with a little G to see my thoughts on the topic. Again, it's easy to understand and respect his views. Our positions on a creator can actually cohabitate side by side because neither calls for fanatical exclusivity the way some other religions do. Now, the last point of difference I want to touch on is his chapter on how to argue for pro-life. There's a bit to unpack here, so bear with me. Now, once again, Nick is thoughtful, articulate, and precise on talking about this topic. While not specifically stating he's a hardline pro-lifer, the way he presents his talking points, founded on his religious position, I think it's pretty obvious where he sits. Where we differ, I think, is on the rights of the mother. The overarching impression I get from the pro-life position is that from the point of conception, the rights of the mother are suspended. While I understand the number of pro-choice women who treat pregnancy as just an unfortunate consequence of unprotected sex are probably quite low, there are still, I believe, a strong volume of pro-choice women who choose life for the baby. I think that the spectrum of options should be pro-life on one end, anti-life on the other, and pro-choice somewhere in the middle. The primary thing I would put in the pro-choice group is the ability to factor in the circumstances around conception as well as the health and viability of the fetus. The circumstances that generated an unwanted pregnancy, usually grounded in assault of one form or another. I won't get needlessly graphic here because YouTube will get upset, but you know what I mean. It could well mean that a woman is impregnated against her will. She should have the option of termination in that situation. That option also includes keeping it if she's so inclined. I've heard stories about women who do that. They were assaulted, they got pregnant, and they chose to keep the baby. And good on them. I'm not going to give anyone any grief who chooses to keep a baby. I don't think it's correct that the law takes that choice away from her. The other category of choice should surround viability. I have a friend who was desperate to have a baby and tried several times before she finally delivered a healthy baby boy, and she loves him fiercely, more so because of how hard the road was to achieve that. Part of that journey involved losing a baby because something happened in utero. Not her fault, she did all the right things, and the baby just never developed properly. The medical advice she was given was that the baby was just not compatible with life. She had to make some very tough decisions, and when she told us about the situation, we took the position that the ultimate decision was hers, and nobody could take that away from her. Our position on it was that she was faced with a really tough situation, but it did not stop us loving her as one of our own. Now, the last point I want to touch on is disabilities. Remember, pro-choice includes yes. My wife and I have direct personal experience with this. There's a test pregnant women can take at a certain point, I think 6 months, to check if your unborn baby has Down syndrome. It involves a large needle carefully inserted into her belly, and there is a non-zero risk of harm to the baby. My wife, being quite needle phobic, immediately said no thank you to that, but in a lot more colourful language than that. We found out about a week after Blaine was born that he did indeed have Down syndrome. It took a few days for us to rebound from that shock, and we took the position of, well, it looks like we're doing that now. Putting the baby up for adoption was never a part of the thought process, let alone discussion. When the nurse asked why we didn't get the test done at 6 months, my response was along the lines of, what's the point? It's a yes-no test with a risk to the baby, and the result didn't matter because it wouldn't change the outcome. The only thing that changed was the fact that Blaine has taken us along a parenting path less travelled, and it has been a blessing on our house in so many ways. Maybe one day I'll do a dedicated video about that, but not today. However, I get that we are not like all parents, and I can see a set of circumstances where the parents are just not able to take on the responsibilities of a special needs child and need the options that my wife and I did not need. Now, when I got to the end of listening to Nick explain his thoughts and beliefs, I was left thinking several things. Firstly, where was this book 40 years ago when I was a young man trying to figure things out? Secondly, I think I owe my kids an apology for not being a better dad than I have been. I don't think I'm a bad dad, but I think there are many things I would have done differently when my kids were little after listening to this book. Thirdly, I think Nick Freitas should seriously consider running for the President of the United States. I say that because of the things I've already said in this video, and despite the differences we have in a few areas. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, and I think it will take a long time to undo the damage he's done, purely around how he acts. The problem is with the man, not his party, not his policies. As an Australian, I've no great understanding or interest in US politics, beyond the fact that you have two major parties that are both interested in managing the country and have different belief systems on how to do that. Australia is kind of the same in that regard, just the mechanics of it are just a little different. Historically, both countries, both major parties, have produced excellent leaders who are intelligent, well-spoken, and inspire people to follow the vision they have for the country. Likewise, both have had leaders that were quite the opposite. I'm sorry, but Trump is just not an inspiring leader. Maybe he needs to read Nick's book and learn a few things. I think Nick Freitas falls into the first category, and the more people that realise this and the benefits to be gained from his leadership, the sooner the country will grow and be increasingly respected on the world stage.
Righto, that's enough about that. You know the drill. Hit the subscribe button and become part of our thriving community. Of course, if you like my videos, give them a big thumbs up and share them if you want, as that helps the channel out. And also hit the bell to get notified when I put up new content. Okay, that's all from me, so stay healthy, keep thinking. As my mum would say, be good, and if you can't be good at it. I'll see you next time.